to be eligible for, oh, that's nice. The wonders of technology. This explains a lot, doesn't it?
Is that better?
Yeah, it's much better. Thank you. One of the requirements to get OBAG funding through the next round, the next OBAG, or NOBAG maybe, if we could call it, is is that every jurisdiction has to have adopted a draft housing element that complies with the next round of regional housing needs allocation, or RHNA numbers. They don't have to be approved by HCD, but they have to have been submitted to HCD by the end of this coming January. And the second thing is that every jurisdiction has to have a general plan whose circulation element complies with the Complete Streets Act of 2008. Now, the last time around, some jurisdictions affirmed that their general plan did already comply with the Complete Streets Act of 2008. Others took the other approach that was allowed under OBAG, which was to adopt a Complete Streets resolution. And it was roughly half and half of the 20 jurisdictions in Contra Costa. It has been from a number of counties, including this county and the CMAs in those counties, a lot of feedback to MPC that that January 31st, 2015 deadline is too short. And MPC is looking at extending it. They have not extended it as of yet. But we will be contacting all of you to see where you are in updating your housing elements and your circulation elements, and to see whether you think that you can or cannot meet that January 31st deadline. So expect to be getting someone calling either from our office or from our consultants in the next week or so to check on that. We are still pushing to have the deadline moved out beyond January 31st, because I know that some jurisdictions are having difficulties and will not be able to meet the January 31st deadline. I know in at least one case that the housing element they're not going to make it, especially with some of the changes in their city council. Anyway, our schedule for the PDA strategy is that in January we put together a draft that would come to you and to the planning directors in January, and then we would forward that administrative draft to ABAG and MTC staff, this committee, and then to the planning directors, the planning committee, and authority for approval, and then we'll send that formal draft to ABAG and MTC, which would meet their schedule, I think. I'm guessing. And we assume that we'll have to have a final strategy adopted in September of next year. So if you have any questions, please try to answer them.
So, Brad, because I wasn't in this county when the original was approved, I don't know what the 8 strategies are. And so I guess I wanted to ask, do jurisdictions who receive this funding have to have an adopted PDA? And then separately, I wanted to ask, the thinking on the HCD approved housing element, would that be that they would have to have it by the time they received funding? Because I would actually be in support of that idea, going that far.
Let me answer the housing element question first. In Resolution 4035, the only deadline is that you have a draft housing element adopted year. There's nothing about and that you have to have that element adopted before you receive any funding through OPAC. And you also have to have a general plan that complies with the Complete Streets Act. On terms of receiving money, if you have or do not have a PDA, we do not know what the requirements are going to be for the next OBAG. We do not know what MTC is thinking on the requirements. The last time around, we had to spend, allocate a particular percentage, 70%, of our funding to projects that were in or adjacent to unserved development in PDAs. Not every project was necessarily in a PDA, but overall, a certain amount of the funding was directed towards PDAs.
So back to the I just lost my thought. Oh, the Complete Streets Act. So if we last time around, I can't remember, did we write a letter or something and said that our general plan is in compliance with the Complete Streets Act? So presumably if nothing's changed, we wouldn't have to do anything, right? Because you're...
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, this aspect of the requirement is a kind of self-certification. And if you look through your general plan, look through your circulation element, and then you look through the general plan guidelines that OPPR prepared for the circulation elements, the revised guidelines, and you believe, and you have your city attorney or your city council or your mayor, city manager say that, yes, we believe that our general plan as it exists now complies with the Complete Streets Act, then so far we believe that that's the only certification that is required. MTC could change that. I haven't heard that they are going to, though.
So we're going to go back through that process again. So, just from a logistics standpoint, all the agencies will be required to do some sort of either council resolution or letter to you or something that says that again. And then presumably the other way you could do it was say that you would comply with the Complete Streets requirements. So those will have to go back through a council process again.
The last time we required a checklist that was signed by someone with the power to sign for the city. Often it was a city manager or a public works director in some cases. Certifying that you believe that your general plan already comply with the Complete Streets Act. But the requirement now, I mean, the thing that I have to do now is, because MTC has asked us to do this, is to go out to all of you and ask what's up. How are you doing on your housing element, and do you think you're going to update your general plan to be consistent if it isn't already consistent with the Complete Streets Act? I'll probably be a little more specific than that, Steve. I'll probably, maybe what's up, Doc?
Brad, just real quickly, do you know if if MTC's funding strategy is proposed to stay the same, the 70-30 split, or are they proposing to make any changes?
I don't know.
Okay. I'm just curious, just because I remember a lot of jurisdictions that didn't have designated PDAs were a little upset by that, and others that had their entire city as designated as a PDA were overjoyed by that. But I was just curious if you had any updates.
No.
Following the first round of OBAG allocations, if they're looking at maybe different kinds of considerations for the next round of the next cycle.
I haven't heard that they, and I do not believe that they will make any wholesale changes. I think there will be changes, but I don't know what they're going to be. And I think that there will continue to be an emphasis on projects that encourage and support development within priority development areas, because the priority development areas are such an important component of Plan Bay Area, and the OBAG process and program is meant to implement the strategy in Plan Bay Area. The specifics I don't know.
Just out of curiosity, do you know if other counties did what we did, where they took the local streets and roads piece and still allocated that, but then made sure that they circled back and it fit the formula of 70-30, but everybody got their share? Do you know if any?
I don't actually. I think I'd have to check to be sure, but I think there might have been one other county that did some of that, but not. I have to check. I don't want to say something that's inaccurate.
Thank you. Brad, do we know where the jurisdictions that received funding from the last round of OBAG, do we know where they are at? Have they spent the money? What the status is with all those agencies?
Some of those are in the project monitoring report. A number of them are. Many of them are on the way, or most of them are. They're all on the way at some point in the process. Some are further along than others, but I mean that's what the monitoring report is about. It does list them. Hisham knows a lot more of the specifics.
Hisham, does that include the local streets and roads also? Oh, okay, so it's the projects and then the local streets and roads as well? Oh,
The bike beds as well as local streets.
And the Safe Routes to School.
okay, thank you.
Brad, I had a question about the PDA working group that you had used before. Are you planning on involving them or convening them at all?
We don't have them in the schedule this time around, since we're going to focus on a much more limited update and focus mostly on status and updating information rather than any policy questions. We had thought about doing more policy questions if there was looking at the OBAG program, but there is no OBAG program and criteria and process to look at this time. So we're not even sure what the purpose of the strategy update this time around is anyway.
So that could change depending on the MTC's guidance that may come out and ask you to provide certain feedback.
Yeah, we don't have anything to respond to yet.
Okay.
MTC was going to do a call for projects next spring, but then it's been delayed probably for a year, I think, in spring of 2016. At least that's some of the feedback we got, but that was a couple months ago, so I don't know what the schedule is now.
So if you were to get some information from MTC that changed some of these assumptions, you'd come back to the TCC and ask for.
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, before we get to the next round of OBAG, you will have discussed this. NOBAG, you will have discussed it several times.
All right, thanks. Any other questions or comments? Okay, and you were looking for an action approval of the content and schedule?
Of the approach and the schedule, yes.
Do we have any motions?
Move approval.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, passed unanimously.
Thank
you,
you.
Brad. And that's adjourns our meeting for today. And our next regularly scheduled meeting is December 18th, 2:30. Thanks, everybody.